In 1957, the CIA reportedly pitched President Eisenhower on a plan to bring peace to the Middle East, not through diplomacy, but by flooding a piece of the Sahara Desert. That plan refused to die for almost 70 more years. This past May, Egypt finally killed it for good. A massive, teardrop shaped basin lies carved into the limestone of Egypt's western desert, a barren sinkhole covering 19,600 square kilometers. This is the Qattara Depression. To comprehend its scale, imagine a depression the size of Lake Ontario or twice the landmass of Lebanon sunk far into the earth. At its lowest point, Qattara drops 133 meters below sea level, making it the second lowest point on the African continent. Along its northern rim, sheer cliffs and escarpments rise nearly 300 meters, forming a massive natural wall that overlooks a desolate floor of salt pans, soft clay, and shifting dunes. This extreme geology has historically acted as a physical barrier. During World War II, Axis and Allied commanders found the depression entirely impassable. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's Panzer divisions could not traverse the treacherous soft ground of the basin floor, nor could they scale the northern cliffs. This geological barrier squeezed the entire North African campaign into a narrow 60-kilometer corridor of solid ground between the depression's northern rim and the Mediterranean Sea. It was this forced bottleneck that dictated the layout of the Battle of El Alamein, turning a vast desert war into a tight, bloody head-on collision. But the very terrain that broke armies soon began to tempt engineers. In 1912, German geographer Albrecht Penck looked at this giant sinkhole and saw a hydraulic battery. He proposed cutting a canal from the Mediterranean Sea into the northern rim of the depression. Because the basin sits far below sea level, gravity would pull seawater down through the channel without requiring any pumps. Normally, a closed basin would eventually fill up and stop flowing, but the Western Desert is one of the hottest, driest places on Earth. Here, intense solar heat causes water to evaporate rapidly. As the sun lifted water from the newly formed lake, it would pull more seawater in behind it, creating a permanent one-way current. This meant engineers could build a hydroelectric system sustained by solar-driven evaporation rather than a conventional river dam. In 1927, John Ball, the English director of the Survey of Egypt, calculated the practical engineering requirements. Ball's report proposed a canal or tunnel spanning between 55 and 100 kilometers to link the sea to the basin. To put that scale in perspective, the Suez Canal is longer at 193 kilometers, but Ball's route required cutting through far harsher, high desert terrain and solid rock. Even with these geographic challenges, Ball estimated that the falling seawater could generate between 125 and 200 megawatts of continuous power. It was an elegant, self-sustaining loop, a power plant fueled not by coal or flowing rivers, but by the desert sun pulling the Mediterranean into the earth. The physics worked perfectly on paper, turning a barren geographic hazard into a potential engine of industrial progress. In October 1957, the Qattara Depression ceased to be a mere engineering concept and became an instrument of covert American statecraft. With Egypt's president Gamal Abdel Nasser forging increasingly close military and economic ties with the Soviet Union, the Central Intelligence Agency drafted a classified memorandum for President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The CIA did not pitch the flooding of the Depression as a simple power generation scheme. Instead, they reframed it as a spectacular and peaceful public works project designed to reshape Middle Eastern geopolitics. The covert plan promised to use massive engineering to achieve several diplomatic objectives at once. CIA analysts claimed that filling the basin would materially alter the regional climate, creating rainfall and rendering the desert hospitable. It would open up vast tracts of new, livable land and provide thousands of construction jobs, which Washington proposed as a settlement area for displaced Palestinian refugees. But the true, unspoken objective was political distraction. By presenting Nasser with a monumental, decades-long engineering challenge, the United States hoped to consume Egypt's national focus and financial resources, quietly pulling the regime away from Moscow's influence. It remains one of the stranger footnotes in US foreign policy, where the tools of geoengineering were repurposed as a quiet weapon of Cold War containment. During the 1960s and the 1970s, the Qattara concept shifted from government intelligence offices to the boardrooms of private industry. West German engineers began examining the basin with renewed commercial ambition. The industrial giant Siemens drafted plans exploring the mechanics of cutting a 55-kilometer tunnel through the desert rock. By the 1980s, these private interests consolidated into a consortium of European and Egyptian firms known as Joint Venture Qattara. With each new corporate proposal, the projected numbers grew. John Ball's original calculation of 100 to 200 megawatts of continuous power seemed modest compared to these massive industrial designs. The joint venture reimagined the project as a pumped storage system. Under this updated model, excess electricity during low-demand hours would pump water to high reservoirs along the northern rim. When electricity demand peaked, the water would rush back down through turbines. This design elevated the theoretical output to several thousand megawatts, rivaling the scale of the newly completed Aswan High Dam, which generated 2,100 megawatts. The basin was redesigned as a massive regional battery, moving far beyond simple generation. Even when these corporate plans stalled, the idea refused to die. In 2016, Egyptian authorities commissioned a ministerial committee to reevaluate the feasibility of importing Mediterranean water. By 2023, engineers proposed hybrid models combining gravity-fed tunnels with solar panels and high-speed turbine arrays, claiming potential capacities up to 5 gigawatts. Each modern revival presented a safer, more efficient, and technologically advanced version of the century-old plan. Yet, as the engineering models grew more complex, they continued to rely on the same basic math, the hope that the desert sun would evaporate water fast enough to keep the Mediterranean flowing into the Egyptian sand. In May 2026, the Egyptian government formally ruled out the Qattara flooding project for good, bringing a century of speculation to a definitive halt. The mathematics of power generation had always worked on paper, but the final judgment rested on ecological risk rather than arithmetic. Hydrological models revealed that pouring Mediterranean seawater into the basin would trigger irreversible seepage into the surrounding Nubian sandstone aquifer. This underground salt intrusion threatened to poison the freshwater springs of the Siwa oasis, permanently salinizing a fragile desert ecosystem. Faced with this threat to its western water supply, the state chose preservation, proving that some natural boundaries could not be engineered away. Aquifer contamination was only the first domino. Below the basin floor lie the western desert's active oil and gas fields, operated by national petroleum companies. Flooding the depression meant submerging these active wells, drowning pipelines, and forcing the costly relocation of extraction infrastructure. Above ground, a hypersaline lake would disrupt the East African Eurasian flyway, destroying the seasonal wetlands that migratory birds rely on for survival. Faced with these mounting liabilities, Egypt abandoned the century-old dream of an inland sea. Instead, Cairo redirected its strategy toward dry development. This modern approach deploys wind turbines, solar photovoltaic arrays, and small-scale desalination plants around the basin's rim. By choosing dry development, the state secured its energy future without sacrificing its natural resources. Today, the Qattara Depression remains dry. It stands as a monument to a profound truth. Elegant physics will always collide with ecological reality. As we chase modern geoengineering dreams, Qattara warns us that some risks are simply too high to accept. What do you think? Let us know below.